Hello, hello. Good afternoon.
Good
This is Marco
afternoon,
Scanu, and
Marco.
I'm here today with Jair, Elena, Crespo, Leal. Jair, it's great to have you today. Thank you for joining us for our webinar.
It
And
is Mhm.
what's that?
No, my pleasure. We've been working together for so long. I'm so glad that that we can now share this time together.
Oh, yes, definitely. Yes, definitely. It's as I always say, we have been blessed with the opportunity to learn from many, many immigration lawyers over the years. You have been one of them. And as you know, we've been talking today at the end of this webinar about 2 to 3 very unique and interesting cases. So that's part of the learning that I always appreciate. And let's give attendees maybe 1 more minute before we get started. So Jair, how are you doing today? And how would you summarize the current immigration climate in 5 words, if I may?
We're living in interesting times, as the proverb says. It's
Okay,
interesting.
5 words. Nice. Okay. But do you consider yourself an optimist? I mean, are you tend to be optimistic or pessimistic when you face
The way I
challenges?
see it, the United States continues to be the land of the American dream. It's
Oh
just the
yeah.
way it is. I think when there's a lot of opportunity to live, to learn, to grow, most of us emigrate because it is a better option. And then we stay here for our kids, and it is a better option for our kids, right? So that's not a thing. The problem, I think, is that we are now catching up to the sins of the past. And I think that that is the problem. A lot of people have been doing a lot of things incorrectly for a long time, and this administration dice aquí se acaba, no más. And it's been a little bit they've been a little bit distasteful about the way they're doing it, but
Mhm.
it is. But there are still plenty of opportunities. The United States will continue to be a good place
Oh
to
yes.
raise children, to develop your businesses, and that's why we do what we do.
I agree 100% with you, and we'll talk about a little more about that in a minute. So I want to welcome the attendees today. Thank you for joining our webinar. And today we're going to be talking from file prep to field intelligence, building a stronger E-2 cases. Again, we have attorney Jair Elena Crespo Leal. I want to talk today. Well, I want to introduce myself. My name is Marco Scanu. I am, as I always say, the founder and orchestra conductor of Visa Business Plans. And a little bit about my background. I am a numbers guy. I studied finance. I am a Gator. Got my degree in business administration with a focus on finance. Then I did an MBA in Italy, Milan. That was a very interesting experience. But then, went back to school 20 years later. As part of the Fulbright program with a focus on entrepreneurship. But the most important thing, I believe, the practical experience, meaning I have been an entrepreneur and founder for many years, more than 35 years. So I know what it means to launch, grow, and scale businesses and succeeded business and failed business. Because only through failure you learn, you really learn. Anyway, in the previous life, I was in the food service, restaurant, pastries, hospitality business. And then in 2009, when I migrated to the US under an O1 in entrepreneurship, a few months after that, I founded Visa Business Plans. And wow, time flies. 17 years helping immigrants get their visas approved and helping lawyers get cases approved or win cases. Anyway, as I said at the
I
beginning of the year,
remember.
we have
I
learned a
remember.
lot from many immigration lawyers, including you. So, Jair, it's your turn. Tell us more about you and your background, please.
Ay, caramba. So I got my Esquire the long way. So I started, I was an attorney in Venezuela. I came to the United States. I got a job offer. I started working at an immigration law firm. And I worked there for a while, a long time. I worked with some really good attorneys. And then eventually I said, you know what, it's time. And then I got married and I had kid number one, kid number two, kid number three, kid number four. So I went and I got my LLM. After I got my LLM, I took the bar and I got my Esquire. After working with a few other attorneys, I decided, you know what, I don't want to do this. I want to work on my own. And then we set up our own law firm shortly before, and we've been growing other cases. I do mostly business immigration. Now we do a little bit of removal defense also because it has to happen. But we do mostly business and family immigration. And that's what I've been doing. I've been working in the field for over 30 years. That's a lot, right? That's a lot. But yeah,
That's
and
experience.
the beauty of what we're going to be talking today right now, the e-visas, is that it doesn't matter what's going on in immigration in the United States right now. E-visas are based on treaties, and some of them are from the 1800s. So, you know, it is beyond any administration. It is international agreements of commerce, navigation, and friendship. And so that is the beauty of the E-2 visa. That's why I think that E-2 visas have a greater possibility of success than some other plans and some other visa strategies right now.
Perfect. Thank you. Looking forward to it. So I want to share the agenda. So we're gonna be talking today first about client prep and file prep. Second, ongoing businesses. They're a different ballgame, but we need to know how to handle them. Third, ears on the ground, AILA listservs and other sources of knowledge and wisdom. Then we're gonna be talking about 2 to 3 case studies, depending on how much time we have available at the end, towards the end of this webinar. And last, we're gonna be opening the floor for questions. And here we go. So let's begin with client prep. I'm gonna briefly talk about how we prepare cases. As I always tell clients, Visa Business Plan, we're a team of professionals. As I said at the beginning, I am the orchestra conductor, and I make sure that we hire the right musicians and that we're playing the right music, that we're orchestrated always with immigration lawyer. So as I always say, if you ask 100 immigration lawyers what an E-2 business plan should look like, you may get 100 or maybe 101 different takes and views. We've done, very short business plan, long business plans. Can you include this? Can you include this analysis? Can you include market analysis? I want you guys to talk about this or that. So we're always very mindful about the fact that each lawyer that we work with has their own style and ways of doing things, and we have to respect that, because you have a formula, you have a recipe that works for you. You believe in your recipe. We're going to respect our recipe, and we want to be one of the best ingredients in that recipe. So the way that we work with, in addition to coordinating with the lawyer and asking, for example, where are you filing the case? We're going to be talking about that in a few minutes. How long should that business plan be? Is there anything that you would like us to highlight in the business plan? Is there any issue that you anticipate, or is there anything that you would like us to really exclude from the business plan? Sometimes we get that request, oh, don't talk about this, don't talk about that. It might be misunderstood or whatever. But then when we work with clients, we tell them, look, we're not doing the interview if you're doing consular processing, right? If the E-2 is going to be filed through the USCIS, then there is no interview. But the important thing is that the visa applicant has to feel comfortable with the business plan. Many clients come with the expectation that they give us a couple of hints, and they think that we're playing Pictionary, and then we're building the whole business plan based on a couple of short ideas. And yeah, we can do that, and we're here to always help. But as I tell clients, look, the business plan is not only for you to get the visa, it should be also kind of a guiding lights for your business, but also it should set the foundation for your renewal. So we need to think strategically about, 2, 3, 5 years down the road when you're going to renew the visa. Most likely the officer will go back and check the initial plan and say, hey, what happened? Your plan was projected, I don't know, $1 million in revenues, and you only have 300,000. What happened? You projected that you're going to hire like 5 people, you only hire 1. What happened, right? So we really need to understand our client's vision, right? And as I said before, if they need help, most of our clients need help or some sort of handholding, we can do that. But one key component is that the businessman has to make sense. And that's, where we bring a very unique experience to the table. The fact that many of my team members have experienced in business for many years. I have personally been, as I said before, an entrepreneur for 35 years. I've been a business coach for more than 20 years. We do a lot of business consulting. So we approach business plan from the perspective of, does this make sense? Right? So it might be one of the most important things. Now, when it comes to
I was thinking of something. There was this client that had his own pasta factory. Remember, you did an EB5 business plan.
EB5, yes.
Yeah, I remember that one. And then when it came, so we got the EB5, and then there was a request when we had to remove the conditions.
Yes.
We looked at the business plan, and oh my gosh, it was 87.3% per.
Great. So I don't know, Jair, I lost you for a second.
Still coherent. I was
Okay.
flabbergasted. Okay, no.
Okay, sorry, I lost you for a second. So yes, it's look, in reality, we do our best to, when and this is key, I believe, when we work with lawyers and clients to prepare business plans, what is our thought process? We have to be ready for the toughest and even nastiest officer in the office. We're thinking, what if the officer reviewing this plan challenges every single number in the business plan? So we always think ahead and make sure that every single number in the business plan is a number that we can defend. In other words, we have to be able to say, this is where the number came from. This is the assumption that we're making, and this is why we can defend the numbers. Why is that professional approach important? As you all know, in most cases, when an officer challenges the number, it's just based on their gut feeling. They don't have a technical analysis saying, this is why I believe that your numbers don't make sense. So we're always ready, and we've done it in the past, put together a letter explaining the reasoning behind the numbers. So we always think not just numbers, defensible numbers. And you guys have no idea how many times we have reviewed business plans written by other companies, or clients who think that the right way to do is to project millions of dollars in revenue. We always say, look, let's under promise and over deliver. But at the same time, other promises can their promises and under an E-2 visa cannot look like, I'm not going to be able to make money, I'm not going to be able to hire staff, because then we're dealing with a potential marginality issue. But we always make sure that the projections make sense. They cannot be realistic. And the way to do that, we actually analyze each client's industry to make sure that we are using industry benchmarks. Now, all of this sounds perfect, nice, but the key to a successful plan is, as you know, Jair, when your client goes for an interview, we always tell them you have to go to your lawyer, make sure that your lawyer works with you to prepare you for, the questions that they may ask. They might ask questions about the business plan, but in many cases, as you know, Jair, the questions have nothing to do with the business plan, and now it's your turn.
Well, I always say that I start my business prep. My prep at first is looking at the consulate where they're going to go. Now it's a little bit more strict, because there was a time when you could go to any consulate, and there was a time with COVID that I had a practitioner friend that would send people to Chad, Central Africa. And she says they approve everything because nobody ever goes there. But that's not now. Now we have to go to our consulate of our natural consulate, which would be either where we have our passport or where we're residing, with very limited. And so if you are an Argentine national living in Costa Rica, you can go to Costa Rica to get your E-2 section. So the first thing we need to do is we need to see what the requirements in that particular consulate are. And we also need to kind of measure the best time to get them approved or not approved, because consulate, we have, every time there's a shift in the consular structure, the consulate general changes, they come in with new instructions. I always tell people, generally consulates change people in August. So it's really not a good, I prefer not to send anybody to the consulate in July, like for an e-visa, unless the consul has been there for a while. Because if they're shifting gears, and they're not going to let us know, but if they're shifting gears, we might find ourselves in a position where we present a case and then the new consul wants to see different information, or they have a different emphasis or something like that. So generally we want to look at the consul. We want to make sure that the instructions that we're putting together our case match, and we want to make sure that there are no significant changes within the consulate by going straight up to the consular page to see how long they've been there, because each consulate will tell us that. Okay, so that's one of the things. And so even though the rules will stay the same, I mean, they can't change the treaty rules, the way they want to see things and the emphasis they have will change. So that's one of the things we want to keep in mind.
Fantastic. And let me tell you, that's one of the key drivers of success, really understanding, as I've heard many times before, that each U.S. consulate it's like its own kingdom, different rules, different ways of doing things.
With business plans, it's really important because certain consulates, Mexico will allow you now to bring like 100 pages. Germany only wants 30. So, and they can change it. And so if you only have 30 pages, you can't present a 20-page business plan porque se acabó. It's like, it's too much. So you need to kind of, exactly. That's why you need to understand each consulate and each different, in the way they want to see it and what they want to see and how they want to see it. It's always a good thing to have.
Right. So you definitely recommend avoiding July as a month to,
I don't know. I always think that July is a unless the consul has been there for a long time, July tends to be an awkward month. They're better in Christmas. You wouldn't believe it. They're better in Christmas than in July. And then because the other thing is because there's a lot of changes in personnel, or there could be changes in personnel, because they're there for 2-year stints, maximum 5. So there tends to be a lot of change at certain months. And then, you know how it is. If you're starting a new job, you're just not quite sure what you're doing. July tends to be not a happy month. July and August, early August, if you can choose, sometimes you have no choice.
Okay, perfect. Nice. So let's talk now about ongoing businesses. They're really a totally different ball game. And I do want to share a story of a real case that we worked on a few months ago. So we were contacted by a client whose E-2 was denied. We did not prepare the business plan for that petition. The client wanted a second opinion again, and I forgot to underline this: we're not lawyers. We do not provide legal advice. We do not answer questions that only a lawyer should be answering. What we provide and bring to the table is 17 years of experience with more than 9,000 cases, and the fact that based on those years of experience, we know what works, what doesn't work, what may be challenged at the consular level or USCIS. And that's what I wanted to underline. Like, we're not lawyers and we do not provide legal advice. Anyway, it was an interesting case. The client contacted us. His E-2 was denied. The client had made an investment of about $400,000, so it was not a small investment, and it was denied. Marginality. Okay, so I said, look, I'm not a lawyer, but let me take a look at the business plan, right? But then here's the key: the client had invested in the business about 2 years ago, so it was an operating business, right? It was bringing revenues. He was creating jobs. And basically, the biggest challenge that I saw was the fact that when I looked at the tax returns, that business was bringing revenues of about $200,000 per year, right? 2 full-time workers, W-2 workers, were part of the company. But according to the tax returns, the company was losing money. They were in the red, $10,000 per year. But then I looked at the business plan, and the business plan was one of those plans with unrealistic and pie-in-the-sky numbers that was projecting $800,000 in revenues, basically going from $200,000 to $800,000, then going from per year from 2 full-time positions to 6 full-time positions. And the really surprising thing was projecting $200,000 in profits. So in my view, even if I'm not an officer, I go, okay, you have to explain and walk me through the specific actions that this E-2 investor is going to take to bring the company's revenue from 200,000 to 800,000, from 2 to 6. It was a fairly small coffee shop.
One of the things, I'm sorry. Finish. I was gonna. No, one of the things that I tell my staff, and that I do, is like, I learned to read financial statements early on in my career, because it's like, and if you have a tax return, the tax return needs to reflect the reality.
Yes.
So anyway, so finish your story, and then I'll give you my 2 cents.
So this is what happened. So that was our professional opinion based on, again, the business plan and the tax return. So we, of course, always remember, in coordination with the immigration lawyer, we recommended, hey, I think that we can build a stronger, more conservative business plan. And a stronger meaning, if you have a company that is losing money, you have to explain clearly how you're going to take the company from losing money to making money. How is that going to happen? What are the concrete actions? Are you going to expand your product offering? Are you going to expand your hours of operation? Are you going to be doing catering? What are the concrete actions that you plan to take in order to grow your business from 200,000 to 800,000? Anyway, we wrote a new business plan, more conservative, where we projected growth from 200,000 to 280,000, give or take, in year 1, and slowly build the business with a credible and very detailed plan, again, listing specific actions. But as Jair was saying, and we always tell our clients, look, numbers tell the story. I strongly believe if I am an officer reading the business plan, but then reading the tax returns, the business plan can tell any story. The real numbers are, the tax return. those tax returns show what the company has been doing in the past. So that's key. So long story short, the visa petition was approved, right? And it was, again, teamwork with the immigration lawyer, but the key lies in, again, the plan has to make sense and the numbers have to be realistic and credible. Now, in summary, what is it that when we handle when any of you is handling an E-2 petition, or even, for an existing business, one of the biggest challenges is that when you work with the CPA is looking at taxes, minimizing the tax bite, right? And that results in many cases in a company that is not making money. And of course, your client / investor is super happy because, I'm not paying taxes. And they're not thinking marginality. They're not thinking how we're going to handle this case where this company is losing money, right? So we, a couple of years ago, created a separate company after seeing so many investors getting denied because of the numbers, right? Where we help by cleaning the books and making sure that the books correctly reflect certain transactions, right? And make sure that the books are visa ready and compliant with the specific visa category. Especially because nowadays, as you all know, there is higher scrutiny, especially with substantiality and marginality. And again, this is part of the game we're playing today, and you already spoke about it, Jair. And I briefly mentioned it. U.S. consulates, each one of them is like its own kingdom. So the right way, especially nowadays, to handle E-2 cases is look at, let's proactively address potential issues and challenges, anticipate, what are the type of things that certain U.S. consulates tend to challenge, or what are the typical questions that, not visa officers might ask when they, review the business plan. But how do you get that intelligence? And Jair is going to be talking more about this. Look, I personally love attending the smaller AILA conference, the regional chapters, the Latin American chapter. I was at the conference in Barbados at the end of last year. It's a full day, excellent conference, very practical. It's super high level conference. I always, tell lawyers you should join a chapter, in the region where you handle this e-visa. Same with the Rome District chapter. I was last month at the AILA conference in Geneva, Switzerland. Wow, it's incredible. I mean, learning from so many lawyers and really understanding the latest adjudication standards, because that's the thing. The law doesn't change that often. What changes is the interpretation of the law. So it's key to be on top of what's going on. And last but not least, the listservs, right? And Jair will be talking about it. And I like to finalize my thoughts is by Leonardo da Vinci. To know how to listen to other lawyers and practitioners is to possess, in addition to one's own, the brains of others. That's beautiful. The way to do it. So go ahead, Jair.
Well, you've mentioned a lot of things. Years ago, we were able to get an E-2 renewed successfully, and the guy had losses the first year of $400,000. The second year, the second renewal, we had $200,000 in losses, because the law says you don't have to make money. You just have to show me that this business is not only for you to make money. So it's not your own little hot dog stand that only makes money for you. There has to be money for also. We were able at that time, because in his case, it was an accounting thing. He made a huge investment, and then the business changed, and we were able to document and prove and explain. So I don't know that would happen as easily now or not. But here, the most important thing, before you send a client out anywhere, you need to learn to read the tax returns. You need to learn to read the financial statements. You need to make sure that everything makes sense. Because I'm not saying that you have to pay more in taxes. I always tell people, hey, taxes in the United States, you have to pay. But paying more or paying less, sometimes it's perfectly legal. Like going from Miami to Orlando via the Turnpike or via the 95. It'll take you about the same 4 hours in travel time. One will cost you about $20 each way. The other one doesn't. You don't have to pay the extra tax if you don't want to. So, but you need to speak with your accountant. You need to make sure that the numbers make sense. You need to be able to read the financial statements and the tax returns. And I've had to tell clients, listen, you need to go get these taxes done again, because whatever they did for you makes no sense. So that is key. You need to be able to read it. If it doesn't make sense, don't send the client abroad, because, and some of us, some business people in our countries, we have like these bad habits, and it's okay. It's like, it's the way we conduct business elsewhere. And here it doesn't work. So we just need to be able to learn to read those financial statements and have the courage to tell the client, you need to amend these tax returns, because without the tax returns that make sense, we're not going to be able to get you. Because you might go to the consulate and the guy who's analyzing you has no idea what he's doing and say, yeah. But what if not? And tax returns are sworn statements. So you can't just come up and say, so sorry, I lied, because you can't. So that is one of the things that it is elemental for you to do, to be able to read your financial statement. And then the other thing, the AILA listservs, I love the AILA listservs. I mean, sometimes but there are the business section and the ACES section, and they have, it's like the experiences of others at the consulate. So many of these listservs, you're saying, hey, I'm sending a client to the consulate does anybody have any gossip? It's actually gossip, but that's not the way to say it. But it's like, has anybody had any experience with Israel? Has anybody had any experience with Canada? Has anybody had any recent experience? Particularly now that we're having all these clients that are in bands. I have a client that has a dual nationality. Has anybody had any experience in this particular consulate? And, it is anecdotal, but it's good to have, it's good to always be there. And I have found that because we're all a little bit trauma bound right now, sometimes these listservs, you reach out to somebody who they get your pain. They understand what you're going through, because they're going through it the same. And I find of late that most immigration practitioners doing business and family are very generous with their time, with their knowledge. It's like, we're all in this together, like the song, because, times are interesting. So that's kind of what
Exactly. Exactly.
And sometimes the AILA listservs sometimes are good. Sometimes, like if you my bar is Washington, right? But sometimes, so my listserv from the Washington bar also has some really interesting information immigration wise. So sometimes if you're in a different, if you're in Oregon, joining that listserv for the small business, it makes a difference. You will be able to get good referrals and a good source of a different information.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the smart way to operate, I believe. And I just wanted to quickly go back to something that you said at the beginning, which is so true. The fact that not necessarily a company has to be profitable. And the example that I always like to use, and we've done many business plans for developers, right? Someone building a 20-story building that they're going to sell or rent. For the first 2 to 3 years, they're not going to be profitable. So the right question to ask is, how will this company be financially viable? Which in simple language is, where will the money come from? So that this company, even though they will have no revenue until they can either sell or rent those units, they can finish the project, right? They can sustain operations. And
one of the things that I like to do, I'm so sorry, but to interrupt you, but one of the things that I like to do, because an investor is I'm putting $100 in this stock, crossing my fingers that it'll provide a revenue, right? And so for some businesses that we know are going to be in the red for 2, 3, 4 years, then we have to present their financial standing, because the marginality is not just is that this business is only designed to give me something to eat. It's only there to feed me. So if we have staff, this business is feeding other people. And also look at my personal business, my personal tax situation. In my home country, I have $20 million in the bank. And this is how I'm becoming an investor. Sometimes we also have to look at the client. I mean, sometimes they won the lottery. Literally, I had a client that won the lottery. He won like $1 million and something in un rapidito. He won the lottery and he used that for the investment. But that's like, 1 in a million. But mostly some consulates, that's why they request the personal balance sheet. Or if they have a company abroad, they say, okay, show me how your company abroad will also sustain the operations in the United States, right? That's why that form DS-100, the 156E is there a foreign parent business, right? Because some companies, I remember once we did a visa for, it was a television station, millions, but they were never going to not be in the red. Well, it was going to take them 10 years to not be in the red. but it was a viable company. I mean, they had all the staff, all the people. Marginality is that this business, it's not necessarily that the business has to be profitable if we read the FAM. It is that the business is not going to only generate income for the investor and his immediate family. So again, it's a matter of presenting it right. And if you know that this is going to be an issue, this is where the business plan comes in. And the beauty of it is, if I ask you to articulate it, then the client can read it again and again and again and know how to explain it. Because it doesn't matter what you're going to do. You're not going to be able to turn a company that should be profitable in 4 years, because that's what the plan is. It's profitable in 6 months, so you can go to your consular interview, right? And there's also no, that you don't know who's going to be reading that business plan. You don't know who's going to be reading the financial statements. But if it's somebody like me that has an idea, they will say, this smells bad. And then and if you present a business plan that makes no sense, the issue doesn't become marginality. The issue becomes your ability to direct and develop an enterprise. You can't even, this doesn't make any sense. I mean, you are Jack climbing up that beanstalk because obviously this is never going to be profitable. As you're saying, it puts in doubt your ability to direct and develop an enterprise. So, if it no te agarra cinco, te agarra sin nariz. If one doesn't get you, then the other one will.
Exactly. Okay? And one final thought, I'm on the main things that I've done. I was a college professor for about 2 years. And, I think that it's something called the cognitive bias, right? If I am presented a clean and credible document, you call it a paper, homework, whatever it is, right? Versus same content, same, but with disorganized, doesn't make sense. I start reading it, it doesn't make sense. How will I'm feeling, excuse the language, stupid. I'm trying to understand this, and I cannot understand what this plan is saying. So it's key. So I always say, we're really in the business of being great communicators. And great communicators have one thing in common. They make their audiences feel smart, that they understanding what's going on. So sometimes the issue is things are presented in a way they're super disorganized, inconsistency even within the business plan. Page 6 says something, page 10 says a different thing. Then these officers were risk averse and say, you know what, I'm not trusting this whole thing. It's not just this document, but why should I trust this whole petition? So what's the connection with being a college professor? You started reading these papers, and you look at that paper that is disorganized, the thought process is not clear. I mean, you immediately think this is not good. So you start doubting a lot of things about that paper. See, should I even trust these documents? So that's key, really understanding that we're in the business of making the audience feel that they're super smart. That's the key. So
the other thing is that the consul really doesn't have that much time to look at your case. So he's going to make a decision really quick based on, what he has in hand. Okay. Our case studies. Oh yeah. You and I, we've been working together for a while, right?
Yes.
And we've had successes in all kinds of levels. So we're good.
Well, thank you always for your continued trust. But okay, I think this is a really interesting case. I'll let you walk us through it because you're the lawyer. I'm not.
Case number 1, we had a family, right? So they were German nationals. The father was German, and he married a lady from the Dominican Republic. They had kids, and the kids, they were all German. So we were applying for them as German nationals. So the daughter comes in, they have an ongoing business. It's coming in, the daughter comes in and she starts handling the business. So we present for her, we present her petition at USCIS because we needed to have her here. We needed a premium process. We needed her to run the business right now. The father had some medical concerns, so we were going to send him to Germany, and then we decided to send him to the Dominican Republic. So while we're working this, we got the very long business plan. Like we had the 70-page business plan. I don't know how many pages it was, but it was a long business plan. It was that comprehensive business plan to be presented to USCIS. Why? Because at the USCIS, we don't have the benefit of talking to a consular
Sorry for
officer.
interrupting real quick. What's our business plan? It rarely has more than 20 because I don't think anybody's for 70. But anyway,
it was the extended business plan. It was the one where there was the marketing plan and the division. It was a full explanation of the business, and they were also buying a business that had been operating for a while. So the business plan was beautiful, but it was the extended business plan, and that's why we sent it to USCIS. But when we were going to send the mom and the father to Germany, Germany has a page limit of 30 pages, 30. So you have they don't include the passports, but the business lease, the purchase agreement, the invoices that the business is active, we're already 50 pages and we're not, it was just we had to give them such condensed material. So we got the business plan into the ultra short business plan. Then, because then the mom decides, no, we're going to get our visa in the Dominican Republic. Dominican Republic will allow you to have 70 pages, I think. So it was, but we still use the ultra short business plan. However, when I sent the mother to the consulate, I gave her the extended business plan because the mom wasn't in day-to-day operations. She was literally one of the investors and she had the business plan. And she was able to read and analyze and study what the business did and did not do. And it gave her like this confidence to explain the business that she was really in by reading it. And because her English is not very good, the fact that she was able to read it in English and practice it in English made her feel more confident when she was talking to the consul. So, and girl and daughter was approved, mama was approved, dad was approved, everybody was approved. But it was just this whole idea that we tailor-made the solution, same business, same family, two separate approaches, because it was what was best for each applicant at the time and at where the cases were being presented.
Exactly. And this ties back to the fact that, it's key to understand how each consulate works. For example, we're doing 3-page business plan for Madrid, 3 pages, and they're comprehensive, meaning they check all the boxes and it gives the officer what is relevant for them to make a decision. Okay, let's see. Let's go to the next one. Next case study. Take it away. Jair.
I love this family. This family was adorable. I mean, they were adorable. And mom was here on an L and the husband was here on an L too, but mom got the news that she was going to get fired. So they say, hey, we're not going to renew your contract as of February. There was a date. We're not going to get you renewed. And so they're like, So I told them, don't worry about it. Your husband has this mechanics shop. I'm sure that you put money into it. Let's look at what he has. Let's look at your taxes and we will get him an E as a Canadian citizen. And then you will get an E-2 as a spouse. You'll have the same ability to work and you can find a different job, but you will not be tied to your business. And he's going to be tied to his business anyways, right? Because it's his endeavor. It's what he's doing. It's what is making him happy. And we're great. So they bring their taxes and, I send them to your way and then they bring their taxes. And I'm like, oh my God, somebody just they got the craps and they literally, the accountant just made up the numbers and they put them up there. It made no sense. I mean, I look at the taxes and it makes no sense. So then we have them work with an accountant and a this and a that. And then the numbers just make no sense. So talking with the family, we realized that they had gotten some of their investment from a settlement that they had gotten in Canada. And the other part of the investment was literally husband working from his house, buying used cars, fixing them and selling them apart from the mechanic shop. The mechanic shop was working. So this is his side gig. And that is where the additional money came from, side gig and putting it into the business. So not only did they have to, again, redo their personal taxes because their personal taxes were a mess, they had to redo the corporate taxes because the corporate taxes were a mess. And then we had to go through almost 2 years of transactions. And we found the $45,000, $50,000 that were missing into the investment. And we were able to get them. It was a process. But again, it was just a matter of, we read the financial statements and we corrected things, because then the other thing was everybody was there on a 1099 and half of them had to be on W-2s. The mechanics needed to be on W-2s. So it's explaining why they had to be employees and not contractors, why these things had to happen. And in the process, the woman gets pregnant with baby number 2. So everything worked out well at the end, but it was working on a business plan and finding the funds, which was interesting. And because it was an ongoing concern, sometimes if you have if you just start the company today and you buy it tomorrow, you can somehow, not say something that is not being asked of you, but they had the business for almost 2 years. So we couldn't just very well say, hey, because now we needed to have taxes corrected. They had to pay a pretty penny to get their taxes fixed and their bookkeeping up to date. And now they're doing everything right. But yeah, that was interesting. So if you're ever in Palm Coast, I can recommend a really good mechanic.
Nice. Clean books is the name of the game. Numbers tell a story, and accounting is the language of business. That's a key concept.
It is.
Okay.
It is.
So this is an interesting, the third and last case we're going to be talking about. This is an interesting one where the investor invested into a failing business, but you have more interesting facts to share about this one.
Yeah. So this is, and this is one of the cases that we worked. It was, so the investor is an Argentine investor, right? His best friend's father used to have a company that was importing and exporting. So they kind of had parallel businesses. So they worked together, but they didn't work all the time. Investor's best friend passes away suddenly. He was in his 30s. It should not have happened. And dad was like, ah. So his business stops working altogether because the dad is so heartbroken. Investor acquires the failing business and he begins to turn it around. So we had to, our business plan and our story to the consulate was this. And it was also, we decided to go with an E-2 instead of an E-1, so that, because it was just easier to document how here's the money and this is what we're purchasing, this is how we're acquiring it, and this is how we're turning it around. So when we come to the consulate, the business still isn't making money. It's still in the red, but there is a story that we can tell that makes sense. And the business, again, because it was an ongoing concern, we had transactions coming, they had employees, they had people that were, so we had people there. And then we also had the support of the Argentine company to add to, like, if we actually needed additional money, the Argentine company could provide additional funds, could come from there. We were able to get our E-2 approved, and this was not that long ago. So I mean, it was still, but again, it was actually quite nice because the investor came in as the surrogate son, and he had 4 kids, right? So the party in the United States gained not only a business partner, but also 4 grandchildren in a sense. And that makes me happy. That makes me happy for that.
Yeah, exactly. That was it. Yes. One of those cases that I will never forget. Yeah, okay, so it's time for Q&A, and wow, it's 10-1. Let's see if we have questions from the audience. Let's see, Q&A. Okay, question here. Is there a good way to anticipate when a consul or adjudication style might change? Okay, so according to the Department of State, consuls are brought as needed to the consulates, and they have 2-year stints, right? So unless they don't speak the language, a consul will be in the United States. They'll go to their posts in 2 years at a time. And generally, those are 2-year contracts, sometimes 3, and it's a maximum of 5. So if you go into the consular page, they will tell you, so-and-so got, as of August 2025, so-and-so has been the consul. So now you know that if she was in on August 2025, barring something extraordinary, she'll be there until August 2027, which means that the rules that they are in place already will continue to be in place. But if it's 2 to 3 years, you need to kind of listen in, because she might be changing, especially if she doesn't speak the language, and it will be kind of annotated in her bio. But also, if she's coming into 5 years, then she's going to be out. Okay, she's going to be out. Those posts don't always change with the change of government. Sometimes they do. Sometimes there's a major sweep, and the executive says, everybody leaves and new ones come back. Though they tend to be more apolitical. They tend not to be, even though they're political appointees, they're it's like favors. But there are people that are like been in the consul, they're Department of State employees for a long time. They're career diplomats. So those career diplomats will continue to be diplomats. And what will happen is, if there's a change of administration, is that they're no longer in Costa Rica, now they're in Chad, right? Exactly. But you always need to see when they were appointed, so that you can see if there's any changes. The other day, we were working on a visa for that was going to be presented in Honduras. They changed the staffing, and the instructions changed, because this person was being brought in from another consulate, and the instructions changed. And we were able to catch it like in a good time, because when they retained us, the rules were one, and then when we were ready to present, the rules were different, and we were able to change. But always go to these specific instruction pages, because they have, it saves you your time. Ears on the ground, and check the consular websites. Okay, thank you. Now, okay, someone asking here a question for me, which is a question that and we at Visa de Suspense get to answer every single day, several times, which is, what's your experience with the minimum investment for a successful E-2? And I will quickly give you a lawyer answer. It depends. So, but anyway,
I always say immigration is a tailor-made suit. What fits me perfectly is not going to look so good on you, right? That's just the basics, right, Marco? Because, it is,
exactly.
and, it's tailor-made. I'm like Armani, I'm that good. But this is the important thing. The investment needs to be commensurate to the enterprise. You cannot say, I put in $250,000 to buy a hot dog stand. You cannot say, I have $250,000 and I bought a Smith and Wollensky. The money is not, in and out itself, is not what is the most important part. It is that the money is commensurate to the investment. Okay. The other thing
Exactly.
is different consular posts will have something that they like more and something like they like less. Honduras, for a while, we could send people with $50,000 worth of investment in Honduras, and these visas were getting approved without a blink of an eye. I will not send somebody to Japan with less than $325,000 in investment, just won't. Europe, $250,000 tends to be a good figure for France, Madrid, Italy. Europe kind of lives. Sometimes I say if I can't document 150,000, I don't feel particularly good. It's like it's the minimum threshold for me, but it also depends on the company, because let's say that you wanted to sell Visa business plans. The only true asset that your company has is you. You are the good faith. Like, so your knowledge, your contacts, but yeah, that's what I'm saying. Your team. So because we're not in things of slavery, we can't put a money value on you. We can only put a money value on your thoughts. So if you wanted to sell your enterprise to somebody else, the only thing that you could sell is the goodwill, because yes, they're computers and yes, they're desks, and maybe you can, assign your lease. But so if you can clearly articulate why you, $50,000 or $25,000 is a valid investment in the acquisition of a company, and you are going to add additional money to that enterprise through expansion, so then maybe you can get it. But again, I always tell people, I feel, for me, if you're not willing to put in $150,000 that we can clearly document, I don't like it. But again, it doesn't really matter what I like or don't like.
Exactly.
It's also what the consulate will tell you, and they will change the rules when the consulate change. So then I haven't sent anybody new to Honduras right now, because I haven't. But I'm believing that I heard one of my fellow attorneys told me that they were having issues with an investment of less than $100,000 now.
Yes.
But again,
exactly.
So we have to kind of
the way we frame the question is, okay, we always, and I think it's key that we all make an effort to put ourselves in the shoes of the officer reviewing. Again, I'm talking about the business plan and the investments within the business plan. So what are the questions that we should all try to answer? Okay, does that investment amount allows this, investor to make the company operational? As we like to think, is we have to show through your business plan that you're ready to open your business tomorrow. The only thing that is missing is give me the visa. I'm ready to go. For example, if I'm opening everything's ready to go. I have the leads, the build out, everything, the advertising, everything is ready to go. I'm ready to operate the business tomorrow. And of course, it also has to do with skin in the game. And a good way to kind of gauge whether amount will be sufficient is, for example, you're talking about Honduras, and generally speaking, in South America, $50,000 and $100,000 go a long way, generally speaking. Now you go to London with $50,000, that's nothing. So it's really the perception of how much you can stretch the money to do things, and of course that plays a part in that decision. But also, I think it's key to look at the business plan and connect the dots between the investment and the job creation and where the company stands. And I always like to share the example of the lowest investment we ever did for an E-2 business plan was 12,338. Of course, this is something that I would even recommend. No way. Now, it was a very unique case. In what sense? Years ago, Sears was selling part of its retail locations. So they were selling retail locations for cents.
Pennies.
Not only that, for pennies. If you bought one of those locations, you would have an agreement with Sears where they would guarantee income for the first 2 years. So you had all these elements that would really address the marginality and the viability of the business. So it's about looking at and connecting the dots. That's key. So last question, how many employees does an E2 business realistically need to hire to demonstrate viability against visa viability? Well, the first thing that I would like to vote is 0 employees, because, the E2 investor is supposed to come here to direct the orchestra and not play the instruments. What are your thoughts, Jair?
I work with a lot of people that do events, right? So here you don't have to have necessarily employees, you need to have people doing the work. So
Exactly.
if your business model makes sense for you to have people working events, then 2, 3, 4, 5 is enough for the event, especially for contractors. For like one of our clients that we're working on right now, he does activations, and he's worked for Amazon and NFL and all these humongous people. And then, but he only needs the people for the activation. They only need to be there for the
Exactly.
2-3 days that they're there. So there's no point in having work like a lot, but you just need to demonstrate that the work is being done by someone else and not by the director, not by the investor exclusively. That's what you need.
Exactly. And it's about explaining things, as I like to say, we don't write immigration business plans, we write children's books. It will be so easy to understand. Anyway, it's already 1 p.m. 1:01. Thank you, Jair, for joining us today. I want to thank also the attendees for joining this webinar today. We hope that you got value out of it. There you have the QR code if you want to reach out to Jair or to Visa Business Plan. We're here to help. Thank you again, and you have a wonderful rest of the day. And thank you.
Bye.